Okay, so here we're going to look at air pollution, carrying on from our last video when we looked at combustion. So when we looked at combustion, what we were actually talking about was something called complete combustion. We said you'd have fuel plus oxygen and you would end up with water and carbon dioxide. So these were our reactants and this was our products over here. When we say complete combustion, that means you're completing this reaction in an environment where you have plenty of oxygen. But what happens if you don't have enough oxygen? What if there's not enough oxygen to undergo this reaction properly? What you end up with is something that's called incomplete combustion. And that affects what products we end up getting given. So you still end up with some water and carbon dioxide, but you end up with two extra products. Carbon monoxide, which is a dangerous poisonous gas, which you may have something called a carbon monoxide detector in your house, which detects to make sure your boiler is not producing any carbon monoxide. And also you may get some soot or carbon, which is from the fuels. If you remember, we said the fuel was could be a hydrocarbon, which is made of hydrogen and carbon. So we end up with our carbon that hasn't undergone a reaction. So incomplete combustion, not enough oxygen, and we'll end up with this dangerous gas called carbon monoxide. Right, what else can happen when you combust these fuels? Okay, now when you have a fuel, although it's got hydrogen and carbon in it, it may not be completely pure. It may have what is called impurities in it. Okay, so for example, something like coal may have impurities in it, like sulfur impurities and things. And what they do is they can produce pollutants. So we get this from burning lots of fuels. It could be from burning fuels like petrol or diesel in a car. It could be from burning coal in a power plant. Okay. When we burn those fuels, the sulfur that is in the fuel will end up reacting with oxygen in the air, and we'll end up with something called sulfur dioxide, which is a pollutant. Okay. But we also may end up with stuff like nitrogen oxides as well. Now these pollutants can be harmful. So they could be harmful to us. So they could cause things. They can not cause things, but they could make things like asthma worse. They're bad for your lungs and things. So that's why you often see people in China who have lots of coal fire stations wearing masks all the time. It's because they don't want to inhale these pollutants that are in the air. Okay. The smoggy air that will be filled with all these pollutants. They don't want to inhale that. So what do we do to try and prevent this from happening? So in your car exhaust, you have something called a catalytic converter. And your catalytic converter, once you've burnt these fuels, before these pollutants get pushed out, what we'll end up with is the catalytic converter will hopefully change them. It will cause a reaction with them. A catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction, but is not used up in the reaction itself. So there's going to be some type of metals in your catalytic converter in your car that's going to hopefully change some of these pollutants into some less harmful things. So we'll end up with water, with nitrogen and carbon dioxide instead. Yes, I know carbon dioxide is still going to end up causing things like global warming, which we'll get onto later, but it's not as harmful as these things over here. So what else can happen? So imagine you had a coal fire station here, and we're burning lots and lots of coal. Okay, well that means that you could end up giving out lots and lots of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide in the smog that you're producing. Okay. So they may have, before those gases are released, they may have catalytic converters in the tops of their chimney to try and change some of these, but it's not always going to work perfectly. So what you end up with is sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides going into the air. Okay, now they're going to react with things in the air. They're going to react with things like oxygens, and they're going to react with water vapor in clouds. Okay, so that can cause a problem. If you have sulfur dioxide and water in the cloud, what you can actually produce is sulfuric acids. Sulfuric acid. So that means that the rain will contain some diluted sulfuric acid. Now that's really bad, isn't it? Now rain is naturally slightly acidic anyway, but if you're getting lots of pollutants into it, you can end up with things like sulfuric acid in that rain. From nitrogen oxides, they can undergo further reactions and eventually end up producing nitric acid as well. And again, that's now going to be in the rainwater. So now we've got sulfuric acids and nitric acids in the rainwater. That ends up producing something called acid rain. So the rain, we said, was naturally acidic anyway, but now it's going to be more acidic and it would be called acid rain. Now that does not mean the rain is going to fall down and burn through metals and things. It's not going to like hurt you if it went on your skin. It's just slightly more acidic than it is meant to be naturally. So its pH has been lowered. Okay, now that is bad because it can affect the environment. Okay, so for example, it can affect if you were trying to grow crops, okay, in a farm, in your fields. Well, your crops may need a certain pH to grow well. And if the ground is too acidic because there's been lots of acid rain, that could affect how well the crops grow. It also could affect wildlife in lakes and rivers and things. It can affect the fish and how the fish reproduce. Acid rain can, so it can damage wildlife quite significantly. So, what can we do to try and counteract this? Well, if we've got acid, you may know that from what's the opposite of acid? Oh, we need to neutralize it using some alkali. So if we have some alkali, substances, we could add them potentially to our crop fields or to the lakes, and we could neutralize those acids, okay? Now obviously you want to avoid doing this in the first place, but that's what you can do if it is causing a problem. You can neutralize them. So you could dump alkalis into the lake or onto the ground to try and neutralize the acidity that's being caused by this acid rain.